things that used to give you joy are no longer giving you joy. For example, some people are really passionate about work. Some people are really enthusiastic about working out. Some people enjoy dressing up. When they go abroad, or if there's a change in any setting, which could be a triggering point, they'd find themselves just cooped up in their rooms, just not interacting with people, having a general sense of irritability. Universities are selling these courses of masters in psychology like hot cakes. We have cohorts going up to 600, 700 students who all pass out, and they get to call themselves counseling psychologists. We have multiple counseling psychologists, but we do not have many people who are trained in working with the neurodivergent population. Working with kids, working with people and kids with autism as well as ADHD. People specialize in working with borderline personality disorder, bipolar. Sometimes, therapists also take it upon their ego that, okay, no, therapy will fix everything, it can do it all. But sometimes we do need the support of medication. I call myself a cautiously optimistic therapist.
Studying abroad is fun and games until you find yourself brooding in your room, feeling lonely. That's the other side of studying abroad that nobody talks about. Homesickness, emotional overwhelm, the pressure to succeed in a foreign system, and whatnot. In today's episode, we are joined by Anushree, a Delhi-based psychological consultant whose journey spans from studying philosophy at Delhi University to pursuing not one but 2 master's degrees, including an MSc in Affective Disorders from King's College London.
I love data. It resolves misinformation. Let's talk to experts, analyze news, and smartly plan your study abroad journey. Hello aspirants, welcome to Videshi Chai. Hi Anushree.
Hi.
Welcome to Videshi Chai.
Happy to be here.
Thank you so much for making the time. I really appreciate it. And it's going to be a very interesting one. Especially we've never spoken to anyone who has studied either philosophy or psychology. You studied both. So I'm looking forward.
Yeah, I'm sure it's going to be an interesting conversation then.
Yeah, absolutely. But it was such an interesting career path, right? So you studied philosophy at University of Delhi, and then you went on to King's College to study psychology, done 2 masters in psychology. Explain to us, how did that come about? How did that career path evolve?
So I was always a very average student, very mediocre, never was a 99 percenter, which was the cutoff you needed to get into a psychology undergrad school at Delhi University. So I said, even if my books are open in front of me, I don't think I'm going to get into one of these LSRs and JMCs. So I said, okay, philosophy sounds something interesting, something new. I would get to see or read something that I've never really read before. That's how I entered philosophy. It opened my horizons completely, got to really delve deeper into various perspectives and point of views which I possibly would have never gotten the chance to. However, I always knew that psychology is still what I want to do eventually. So during all those 3 years of undergrad, I was still training. I trained and interned at hospitals, rehab facilities, private clinics. That's when my first internship was in a queer affirmative organization in Delhi, which was, I think, Delhi's first queer affirmative psychology clinic. And that's when I realized, okay, this is something I'm really interested in. I want to stay on this track. Then I said, okay, for masters, let's do clinical psych. It took me to Amity University, Noida. Went on there, did a 2 years masters in clinical psychology. At the end of it, I was still training with different organizations, but I realized that, I need something to put me at a place that sets me apart from the rest of the cohort, because we were a cohort of about 400 students. At the end of those 2 years, everyone was calling themselves a counseling psychologist. But I wanted to get a specialization, I wanted to get an expertise, which then took me to specialize in affective disorders at King's. So affective disorders basically mean focusing on anxiety, depression, and bipolar. That's what my training is in, and that's what I work with now especially.
You see, another term, queer affirmative.
Yes.
Did I get that right?
Yes.
What does that mean?
So people who work with people from the LGBTQIA+ community. So there's one thing to be queer sensitive and one is to be queer affirmative. When you're affirmative, then you're not just neutral in any stance. If there is something happening around the world, if there's any sort of injustice, it doesn't even have to be injustice. It can just be you showing up your allyship towards them, which means speaking up for them, working with them, making sure they're included in any and every space that you occupy. So I make it a point in my private practice that I'm always working on a sliding scale with 2 or 3 people from the queer community, because these people are usually marginalized. They're not given the same employment opportunities, housing opportunities. Hence, the sliding scale also comes in.
Nice.
Yeah.
You said your 3 specializations in affective disorders are bipolar and the 2 are?
Anxiety and depression. Yeah.
These, since you work in India, which is the most frequent one that you deal with or that you encounter?
Anxiety is something that's the most, that comes up the most often. Also because anxiety does not have to be anxiety disorder per se. It can also just be anxiousness. These days, a lot of people, especially after COVID, I feel, have started experiencing health anxiety. So it could be triggered due to COVID. It could be triggered due to something that happened in the family. For example, if there's a diagnosis of cancer in the family, the children might, start checking themselves more frequently. If there's any lump, if there's any bump, if they're coughing more frequently, if they're more feverish than usual, they would go on and visit multiple doctors and specialists, get multiple tests done, multiple scans done. When they see that it's clear, they get a short respite, but there's still some sort of anxiety that maybe something is still amiss. So this could be chronic pain or anything like that. Or of course, work stress is something that's always there. Family environment stress is something that's always there. All of them look like anxiety disorder, but it could also just be anxiousness that people are experiencing.
Yeah. Often, or rather, even till now in India, psychological disorders are looked at negatively in the society.
Yeah.
Right? And therefore, that leads to have an inhibition to self-diagnose. We seek out somebody's professional help.
Yeah.
So, which of the disorders that you work with or that generally come in the psychological community are the most difficult to self-diagnose? And what are kind of the triggers that people should be looking for? And there's a bit away from our agenda of today, which is study abroad rate.
Yeah.
But because it's so interesting, I want to touch upon, because some of our readers who go, some of our viewers who go abroad, they might also be subject to these kind of situations, these kind of, simply because they're away from home. They have, their support system has reduced considerably. What are the triggers, what are the markers rather they should be looking out for and seeking help?
Yeah. So a few things that people generally need to keep a check of are low mood, a general low mood. Things that used to give you joy are no longer giving you joy. For example, some people are really passionate about work. Some people are really enthusiastic about working out. Some people enjoy dressing up. When they go abroad, or if there's a change in any setting, which could be a triggering point, they'd find themselves just cooped up in their rooms, just not interacting with people, having a general sense of irritability, feeling a sense of loneliness, missing out on friends and family back home, but still not getting in touch with them, not reaching out to them. If they are calling, okay, I don't want to speak that much. I just want to be by myself. So there's a split, it's a dissonance that they're experiencing, where a part of them is missing on that connection, and a part of them is also staying cooped up within themselves. Those are the few basic ones. Some bodily checkers, if you feel that your heart rate is going up, if you feel there's tension in your back, in your jaw a lot of times. Another very common one, there's sort of research backing up as well, is people who sigh very often. They're like, people who sigh have a higher likelihood of being anxious or even experiencing low mood. And I'm using low mood very consciously. It doesn't have to be depression, but it can just be low mood as well.
And I like how you phase it. Things that used to give you joy, paying more.
Yeah.
That's something that our viewers can watch out for, look out for.
Definitely.
That's generally easier to sort of self-diagnose.
Yeah.
I understand.
Yeah. Though I always say, self-diagnosis is never the best option.
Triggered this.
Yeah. Something to be mindful of, something to keep in check.
Yeah, diagnosis is probably not the right word.
Yeah.
Makes sense. Talk to us about the status of psychology in India, and is this something as a career option that you would suggest our viewers to look at? So both from a societal acceptability, which you touch upon,
Yeah.
as a career option, both viewpoints.
Yeah, it's picking up for sure. It's big. Universities are selling these courses of masters in psychology like hot cakes. We have cohorts going up to 600, 700 students who all pass out, and they get to call themselves counseling psychologists. However, what we as a country are missing out on is creme de la creme professionals, experts, people who are specialized into a specific field. We have multiple counseling psychologists, but we do not have many people who are trained in working with the neurodivergent population, working with kids, working with people and kids with autism as well as ADHD. People specialize in working with borderline personality disorder, bipolar. We need people who have an understanding of the pharmacology as well, how medicines play a role along with therapy. At the master's level in India, according to my experience, we are not taught the pharmacological bit as much as we possibly should be knowing. Yes, we are not equipped to prescribe medication, but we need to have a basic understanding of it so we know how much of this is a side effect of a medication and how much of it is really the concern that we're dealing with.
So that you can at least refer them to somebody.
Definitely. Yeah. Sometimes, therapists also take it upon their ego that, okay, no, therapy will fix everything. It can do it all. But sometimes we do need the support of medication. I call myself a cautiously optimistic therapist. So I will not be someone who will just, say, okay, go to a psychiatrist and get the medication for this. That will be my last resort. But when I do recommend people to visit a psychiatrist, I tell them that this would really genuinely benefit you to come to at least a space of equilibrium. And from then on, you can at least engage in the psychotherapy work that we're doing together.
Yeah, makes sense.
Yeah.
So you mentioned your qualification as a counseling psychologist. How does that differ from a clinical psychologist, and who should one approach when?
I love this question because it's so relevant, and I really want all the viewers to know this. So a counseling psychologist is someone who will help you with concerns such as low mood, anxiousness, some sort of relationship difficulties that you're experiencing. If you want to do some self-exploratory work, there are transition problems, transition in different roles. For example, someone has just gotten married. They're having these adjustment problems. Someone who's just moved cities, someone who's changed in a job role. Those are life transitions that are happening. Grief, loss of a person, loss of a pet, things like that.
Parenthood, I think that's something to recently.
Okay. Yeah. So those are the things that counseling psychologists help with. A clinical psychologist is someone who has done an MPhil. That's a completely different degree altogether. The RCI keeps on changing these rules and regulations, so all the psych people would know the frustrations of this. But a clinical psychologist is someone who diagnoses a problem. Someone might come into me in session and say, okay, I'm super depressed. Yes, you might be experiencing depressive-like symptoms, but whether it is clinical depressive disorder, that is something a clinical psychologist will diagnose after doing a bunch of assessments and tests. There are some clinical psychologists who say, okay, we really need to get a diagnosis done, because if we have a formal diagnosis, we can present that to a doctor, a psychiatrist, who will then give you medication accordingly. If they're just anxiety-like symptoms, depression-like symptoms, that leaves room for a little vagueness. So the psychiatrist may not be able to understand, okay, what am I really dealing with here? I need a really fixed structure so that there are no room for errors with the medicines, which can then even make the situation worse for you, which happens very often actually. So bipolar 2 is one of the most misdiagnosed disorders ever in the world. It's usually misdiagnosed as depression, and it takes about a whole decade, 10 years to reach the correct diagnosis of bipolar. What that means is that for 10 years, this person may be taking medication for depression, which means that their mood becomes better. but they can also go in a manic state then, which then looks like bipolar. So there's a lot of problems that a patient can feel, that a patient can experience if the diagnosis is not correct, if the medication is wrong. We don't want any of that to happen. Hence, we need a clinical psychologist when it's more clinical concerns like schizophrenia, bipolar, eating disorders. There's a lot of biology involved with all of that.
Then you would refer some of your...
Yes. If there's someone who comes in for a session and I see that, okay, this is something that would benefit from a clinical expertise, I'd be more than happy to refer them out.
Nice. Right. So coming back to studying abroad, we have seen that we've heard from our students as well, go abroad because of change in their environment, reduced support structure, something you earlier spoke about as well. It's common for them, relatively more common for them compared to their stay in India to experience mental health challenges. Yeah. What was your experience like, both for yourself and for your peers and friends when you were abroad in London?
Yeah. So the thing is, with UK especially, seasonal changes play a big role. Because the weather is super gloomy, it's dark for most of the day. You get sunlight during winter times only from about 6 hours a day. So the general gloominess, the general darkness makes you also feel those blues. So you're very prone to feeling that low mood that we were speaking about earlier. Along with that, add up loneliness, add up the ever-coming assignments, projects, dissertation work that's there. And you're in a new city, you're in a new country, you want to do a bunch of things. You're always overwhelmed with things that you want to do. So there's a split again where I want to study, I want to score well, but at the same time I also want to travel and explore and party and, meet new friends. So those are kind of challenges that people usually face. In London, however, because it's the city, main city, people don't really feel very homesick because you're surrounded with other Indians all the time. There are always things to do. However, people who are more in outskirts cities like maybe Birmingham, Manchester, Brighton, Cardiff, those are more countryside places. They're not as metropolitan as London is. There are more campus lives over there, which is why it might get even more lonelier in those areas. Yeah, but London, it always has things to offer. Great food, great museums, great places to be, parks. Safety is there. Of course, it does have your pickpockets and other things that are happening. But as compared to Delhi, if I were to say, of course, you can enjoy your time. You can leisurely just have a good time there as well.
And let's say somebody is feeling emotionally overwhelmed, a student studying abroad from India. Mm-hmm. What would be your, let's say, top three-step recommendations for them? What should they be doing to sort of get better?
Mm-hmm. Number one, I would say have an anchor. Have an anchor that is a person that is back in your home country. Someone who keeps you in touch with what's happening in your homeland. It acts like a bridge. It acts like a bridge of connection. It can be a family member. It can be a friend. Because you're so occupied, you're so busy with things to do at all times, we often don't actively make a point to connect with these people back home. If someone's texting, we'll always reply. If someone's calling, we'll always call back. But how often are we the first ones to give them a call? How often are we to, reach out to them? I always say FaceTime is better than calls and calls are better than texts. So have that one anchoring person. You don't have to speak to them every single day. Even once a month is good enough. The other one would be get some natural light. Get out of those tiny apartments and student accommodations. Go out into the parks. Go for these long walks. Enjoy the city. Really get to know the city. Natural light does not mean just sunlight. It can also be the moonlight. Vitamin D3 deficiency it clinically, research-wise, manifests as low mood. You might feel that I'm feeling depressed, I'm feeling really homesick. Maybe you're just deficient in vitamin D3. I'm big on that. The other one would be, again, magnesium and zinc deficiencies also manifest as low mood. So get those, biological checkers in place and then we can see. The other one would be know your goal. Why did you come abroad? Why did you leave your homeland? What is your main purpose of being away from home? Sticking to that, having that as your navigating point really helps in keeping you on track. Okay, whether I want to prioritize studying. It gives you some structure on how you plan your weeks, your months ahead. Do I want to spend my time, meeting new people, socializing, networking, expanding my social skills, for example? Or maybe I need to, look for jobs. I need to be hunting for that. So those are a few things I would recommend. Treasuring and really savoring your time there. One thing I personally did was I would click a lot of photographs of just places. So I would create something like a digital album to just savor my time there. I knew that I was only going to be there for a year. I don't want to miss out on anything. I want to have these memories. And yes, there might be days when I'm not feeling the best, but I'm still doing some crazy and wonderful things which I would not have gotten the chance to do back in Delhi. So, yeah.
And to get a parallel, the way you mentioned having a goal as something you can refer back to, it's sort of similar to having a self anchor, which is parallel to having a person as an anchor, which was the first step that he gave.
Yeah.
Is that a good way to think?
Yeah, definitely. I would agree with that.
And to get yourself tested for biological markers, that is a deficiency, I think a simple blood test is a good place to start.
Yes.
That's something that I myself and some of my family members do on a regular basis just to see what's not working, what's working.
Lovely.
I think generally I've found that you get surprising results.
Yeah. And you do see the difference also, I guess. If you take the medication, if you take the supplements for approximately 4 to 6 weeks, you will get to feel the differences as well.
So, less tired, more upbeat. I've felt those differences myself, my family as well.
Sleep quality gets better, mood gets better. So, definitely will show an effect.
Yeah. Fully agree with that. Right, but studying abroad is already so expensive. And the living costs, tuition costs, whatnot. And now, possibly, there could be a therapy cost involved for students as well.
Yeah.
How, as a student, can you account for it, or how can you afford it?
So, seeking help abroad can definitely be very expensive. It depends from country to country whether that is included in your insurance or not. In most cases, unfortunately, it's not. But India does have multiple therapists. You can always reach out to someone who's back in your home country. Of course, time difference is an issue. Navigating that is a difficulty that you will face. I was working part-time when I was doing my second master's there. So I was working online with clients. I used to see my clients in my early hours and their late evenings. There are a lot of therapists who offer pro bono sessions, so they're free of cost. Depends on each therapist's own choice. For example, I offer sliding scales to different sorts of minorities, whether they're religious minorities, caste minorities, gender minorities. But there are therapists who definitely offer sliding scales to people studying abroad. That is one thing I would encourage people to find out through LinkedIn searches, mainly. Yeah.
And sometimes I've understood that great schools like King's College might have an in-house counselor as well. Is that true, or...?
I'm not, that's interesting because I'm not aware if we do have an in-house therapist, but the faculty is so supportive. So my cohort was super small. We only had 23 students in our cohort. Till now, fewer than 10 Indians have done this course. So it's super selective, which gives... support in multiple different ways, not just studying wise, but I personally had a personal tutor, I had a group tutor, and I had my dissertation supervisor along with the entire cohort head to help me out for any and all issues, whether it was academic, whether it was something personal that I was going through, whether it was something social that I was going through. If I was having trouble adjusting to my life in UK, they were more than welcoming to help me out with that. So we don't have therapists per se, but for general support, we have people who are always readily available. Yeah.
And in this structure will help reduce the probability of mental issues coming up, right?
Yeah, it's more preventative in that manner. And I think that's in line with creating that environment. And I personally have learned a lot from it in the sense, even in personal life, I would want to create an environment if I do end up having an organization of my own, I would want to make sure that my employees or people working with me feel comfortable enough to, bring up these issues with me so that we can do something at the very root cause. It doesn't have to become a big thing. Maybe we can just nip it in the bud.
Yeah, it makes a ton of sense. And for me, and I think you advise this as well. It goes down to personal choice and steps that you can take as a prevention, which is to surround yourself with a larger group of friends who are proactive, who are maybe outgoing.
Yeah.
They get you out of your room to see more daylight.
Yeah.
They get you out of your room to see more experiences, and therefore there's lesser time for negativity to foster.
Definitely. Community practices are at an all-time low in today's time, I feel. Think about our grandparents. They used to go for these morning walks. They used to have these laughing circles. Mothers and elderly women used to have these kitty parties, or they would go to temples or places of, worship together. They would sing together. So we've always had community as a part of society. But these days, because of hustle culture, everyone wanting to excel at work and doing multiple things, dabble with multiple things at the same time, we have to really schedule time with friends. It has to be on the Google Calendar, otherwise it's not happening at all. So, community is something extremely important, very often ignored in clinical settings. Because someone is coming into you in a session and saying, I'm experiencing this, help me out. What they want are solutions. They want a tool, a technique, some homework, a worksheet to help them. If I tell them, okay, why don't you try hanging out with friends? They're like, ye to main khud bhi kar sakta hu. I don't need to come here and hear this from you. But it's not that the community is the only solution to it. It's a part of that environment that we're trying to build.
In light of this conversation, it makes me think that students going abroad, they should ideally have some sort of a prep session. Focus on this.
Yeah.
Would you agree? And what would that session look like? What should they do? How did they seek out such sessions? Think about it. We could even create one. So that's an idea for me to one later.
Yeah.
But generally, what should the students do, and should the session be done?
Now that I'm thinking about it, it's a really cool idea. And I think students would definitely benefit from it. Because a lot of times people they jump into this decision of going abroad because it seems so exciting.
Yeah.
They haven't thought about the cons or the downside of what it could look like also. A preparatory session would definitely be helpful. It could look like just talking about how they're feeling. Yes, there's excitement. Yes, you're looking forward to it. But along with that, are there any worries? Are there any nervousness that's there? Are there any worries about settling abroad, the job situation abroad, in the current political environment, physical safety abroad? What really are there things that are causing worry for you? We don't really sit with those reflective questions very often, neither with friends nor with family. Having these really in-depth conversations with anybody could be helpful. It doesn't have to be a therapist. It doesn't have to be a workshop facilitator. Even if you're able to journal that for yourself, write it in your own diary, that could be really helpful. The point is to take some time out for it. The other thing, as I said, know your why. Yeah. Know why are you going abroad? What is your agenda? What is your purpose? If the entire point is to, settle abroad, in your 10-year plan, your 5-year plan, you see yourself thriving and living a good life there, then in your 1 or 2 years of masters, in your 3 years of undergrad, that will be your anchoring point. And you will be working towards finding an internship, finding a job, finding people, mentors who you look up to, people you can connect with into the job spheres. So knowing your why is something very important. For me personally, it was, to explore different facets of my personality, which would remain completely untapped in my homeland. I wanted to experience just going to a museum. Where else would I get to see Van Gogh's sunflowers and Rembrandt's portraits and Monet's lilies? Nowhere else in India. So that was something I wanted to do. Walk around in parks, enjoy the sunlight. Delhi's weather, unfortunately, does not allow us to do that. The other was to gain expertise and specialty into my coursework. That does not mean me being the topper of my cohort, me scoring exceptionally well. But I wanted to gain a very deep and clear understanding of what my work would look like, which is why 70% of my times I would be in my libraries. The memories that I have of my time in UK, what I miss is those beautiful libraries at King's College. We had one of the oldest, I think, pathological museums at the King's Medicine School, where they have some of the most unique and rare pathological specimens. We have the adrenal glands and lymph nodes, which Thomas Hodgkins later described as Hodgkin disease, which is a type of cancer now. But the first few of those are kept preserved there in beautiful condition. So to be in those corridors, to be in that environment, it pushes you to do something more, think deeper, not just do better, but be better. So I think being in those environments, having a really solid understanding of, okay, this is my reason for being here, helps you stay put and navigate through your time.
And was course structure, or rather course content, not structure, also part of it? You mentioned what you studied here at Amity, and then how the curriculum at King's was sort of complementary, added to it.
Yeah.
If you compare sort of the teaching style, the content, the matter that was delivered there, was that up to your expectations, and how different was it?
It was vastly different. It was much tougher than I had honestly expected it to be. So the first master's that I did was a Master of Arts. This one was a Master of Science. So this was much more clinical in its nature. There was a lot more focus on the biology of it, a lot more focus on the pharmacological aspects of it. King's psychiatry department, the research work is among the top 10 in the world. So it's very heavily focused on research work. We would only be reading systematic reviews and meta-analysis all day. We would be working on randomized controlled trials. So it was much more scientific in that aspect. At Amity, it came from a more social studies lens, where there was more focus on the theoretical aspect of it. We were recommended to do internships at Amity, which most of us did. But at King's, along with internships, you were also recommended to have a placement at one of these mood disorder clinics. So I got to work with Dr. Kareen McRitch, who is one of the lead psychiatric consultants at a mood disorders clinic. So they work only with people experiencing extreme severe levels of depression, anxiety, and bipolar. So you get a really hands-on experience on all of that. I'd like to share a personal, this story. It's not a personal story. It's of this client, this patient I saw at the clinic. She was a wonderful woman, 60 years old, had been diagnosed with severe depression 30 years ago, is still currently dealing with it, has not come out of depression, has not healed from it, as they say. It's something that she's experiencing and she's living with. At present, she's thriving with it. Initially, it was so severe that she would not bathe for 3 weeks. She would not be able to engage in basic self-care activities like brushing her teeth for 10 days. She would be cooped up in her apartment for a number of weeks altogether. She then had to go through physical treatments such as ECT, elective convulsive therapy, which helped her a lot. And at present, when I saw her, she was this wonderful social woman. She would go out with her friends. She would go out for Sunday brunches with her family members. When the patient left, I asked the psychiatrist, how did she cover this entire journey? How is she at this point now? Someone in the drudges of depression to now be thriving like this. How did it all start? She said, Anushree, the first thing I recommended her to do was to find a third space. Usually what we do is, we have our home, which is the first space, work, which is the second space. Usually we only go from point A to B, B to A. There are not many third spaces, point C's, where we are regulars at.
Yeah.
People abroad have these things where they would be a regular at a coffee shop. They'd be a regular at the gym. They'd be a regular, they'd go to the park every week. Sunday churches or something. Of course, here also people do visit these religious places once a week or things like that. but it's not as prevalent as it is there. That woman would go to this coffee shop every Sunday, sit there at 1 p.m. for an hour. This was homework which was given to her by the psychiatrist. What happened was she would be there at 1 p.m. every Sunday. She would see similar faces around. She would end up passing a smile to someone, acknowledging the presence of someone. Someone else would acknowledge her presence. The ability to say, hey, can I get my regular? Is such a comfortable home-like feeling that she started enjoying that, and that was one of her motivations to then, expand her choices. She would then be open to meeting newer people. She would be open to having newer conversations. She found a space which was not just her home, which was not just her really stressful job. It was a third space which was comfortable for her.
Very interesting.
Yeah.
What a story. All right, let's come back to you. So despite being offered a role in London, you decided to come back to India. Explain your thought process there. And what are your goals now that you've come back?
So before even applying to universities abroad, my main goal was to come back to homeland. Though I was offered a role there, I was very clear in my head that this is not something that I want to do. I don't see myself living in that country for life. With the housing crisis, the kind of economic situation that's there, I would rather come back and work here for my people, for my communities here. I think India is in a very fertile place when it comes to mental health work. It's just at the very brink of it. People are excited, people want to know more, people want to do more, people want to get involved more. There's a plethora of opportunities coming up here. Especially because I work with a social justice lens. I was very motivated to come back and work with minorities, or whether it's, again, as I mentioned, caste, class, religious, differently abled people, gender minorities. I feel that there's a lot of opportunity here to do that, in the sense of it's very untapped here. Over there, yes, there's a lot of conversation about it. A lot of work is already being done.
Yeah.
Here, I think there's so much more that needs to be done in a very ethical manner, without it being exploitative, without it being manipulative in any way. It just needs to be affirmative. We need to make space to include these people into our normative spaces. That is something I'm passionate about. That is one of my main agendas for also coming back. Ever since coming back, I have, of course, I do visit conferences, I do work very closely with these communities. So, yes, the work is on. Yeah.
Very, very interesting. And we wish you all the very best for your future. Again, thanks so much for making the time for this. This has been a pleasure. And I'm sure it's going to be super, super helpful to all our viewers.
Thank you so much for having me. It was a super fun conversation to even, have this with you. So, yeah, thank you so much.
Today's theme is something that I've always wanted to have a discussion about from the very inception of this channel. I really hope that study abroad aspirants and my viewers who are planning to study abroad think about this side as well before planning their journey. I'll be back next time with another interesting topic, but before you leave, don't forget to like, share and subscribe to Videshi Chai.